And we are back on Global. I am Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for sticking with us. We are continuing with our debate. Are U.S. security concerns legitimate when it comes to Greenland? Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is continuing to assert that the White House must take control of the island, and European leaders are outraged. Have a listen.
This is not how allies should treat each other. And in that sense, I understand the word blackmail. We have until February 1st to really present a united front, to make it clear that we do not find this acceptable. And we have also stated that, as far as we are concerned, the territorial integrity and self-determination of Greenland and Denmark are not up for discussion. But we also believe that the use of trade tariffs in this way is inappropriate and, moreover, unnecessary. So that will be our message.
Well, joining us on the panel, we have Anne-Sophie Allerup. She's an analyst from Denmark. We also have geopolitical strategist Valina Chakarova with us as well. And finally, chairman of the Republicans Overseas Israel, Mark Zell. So let's start with our quick fire round once again. I just want to remind our panelists you have 30 seconds to answer this first question. And from there on out, we have more time to answer each question. So our first question is Europe right? Are Trump's tariffs counterproductive? Mark, why don't you begin?
Look, Donald Trump is a genius. He's used tariffs to change the world economy. The U.S. economy is booming now in large part because of his tariffs. And the idea of using tariffs as a negotiating tool with the Europeans to get control of Greenland is also brilliant. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a negotiation. And that's fair in international diplomacy. Tariffs are a part of the toolbox.
All right, Anne, you are next. What is your reaction to this question? Is Europe right? Are Trump's tariffs counterproductive?
I think the Americans need to ask themselves what kind of relationship they want with Europe. Europe has been a part of the most powerful alliance, defense alliance in history with NATO. And that kind of alliance is built on trust. And that trust has to be nurtured and not, this is not simply the way to do it. And I think the European states are right in saying so to the US.
All right. Valina, what do you have to say to this question?
Trump's tariffs on Europe in this particular case are counterproductive. They could lead to a trade war between two strategic allies, between United States and Europe. They could weaken not only the Euro-Atlantic bonds, but one of the most important strategic allies, if we claim that the United States is preparing and is going to face the dragon bear, the China-Russia coordination on the global arena, this is exactly the way how it should not be done. And also, they could be actually overruled by the US Supreme Court. So in that case, it's also politically not very smart to attack an ally.
Okay, we're now going to open the panelists to a longer debate forum here. Every question I ask, you can now take your time, but not too long. You want to make sure we can hear the other voices as well. Obviously, there were some clear divides in the answers that we just got from our panelists. You know, is this infighting between NATO partners and between the U.S. and the EU ultimately going to embolden America's rivals, namely China and Russia, which obviously Trump is concerned about in the first place? Mark, what's your take?
Well, listen, this is a constructive debate among allies within the NATO framework. And one of the things that Donald Trump has done since he's become president, both in the first term and in the second term, is to focus the world's attention, the American public's attention, on the utility of NATO and the strength of this European alliance. That the United States has been picking up the bill for NATO ever since the end of World War II. And has given cover to the Europeans consistently for their protection against aggression from particularly the former Soviet Union, the Russia, China today. This is the reality of the relationship. It's a one-sided, asymmetrical relationship where the United States is picking up the bills and the Europeans are enjoying all the benefits. Now, You can see this in the Ukrainian dispute between the United States and the Europeans, with the situation in the Balkans, with Srpska Republic and so on. This is an important time for the United States to say to the Europeans, okay, you've had a good ride for 75, 80 years. We're going to reset the relationship. You got to pick up your part of the bill, and you've got to recognize that the United States has overweening interests in Greenland. Give it to us, sell it to us, or work it out in terms that we can all live together with.
All right, Valina, I kind of saw you making some faces in response to that. What is your take on this?
First and foremost, we know for a fact that the United States, as one of the superpowers, has won the First Cold War because of its loyal and reliable strategic partners and allies, and of course because of NATO and the Euro-Atlantic bloc. And this is going to be the case in the Second Cold War. The United States cannot project hard power on its own. It needs reliable and solid partners. It needs them in the Arctic, in the north. It needs them along the eastern flank of NATO, which is going to be the new Iron Curtain, to actually contain Russia. And it's going to need such partners also in the Indo-Pacific. So imagine the case that United States relies on territorial annexation, just similarly as what Putin is doing with Ukraine, and similarly with what Xi Jinping wants to do with Taiwan. That's not going to be the best example to set, not only for allies, but actually for the world, in terms of convincing actually that the United States is a different superpower as compared to the Dragon Bear. So I claim that here, once again, the United States needs its European partners. It needs them in the Arctic. It needs them in the Black Sea. It needs them in the Indo-Pacific. And if it creates this precedent with territorial claims on Greenland, it's going to be a serious strategic hit for the American power projection.
All right. I want to talk about this a little bit more, and I want to hear your take. You know, could imposing these tariffs on NATO allies over Greenland damage, you know, transatlantic relations permanently? In other words, is this going to lead to the end of NATO as we know it?
Well, the tariff issue, I think, is separate. Of course, it's destructive to the trust. We've just managed to make a tariff agreement with the U.S. That the U.S. now imposes new tariffs on top of that. Of course, is not beneficial. There's no way, shape, or form that a weakened NATO alliance is a benefit to the U.S. It's also not a benefit to the Western way of looking at the world, that the Western hemisphere is infighting over territory within the alliance. Of course, that's not going to strengthen the U.S. I also want to just point out that the Danish presence in Greenland goes 1,000 years back. Since during 300 years, we've had the sovereignty over the territory. A third of the Inuit population in Greenland live in Denmark. We are tied together culturally and through history and through families in ways that cannot just be described as a fluke or something haphazard as it's been portrayed here. This is quite serious also to this quite small population on Greenland who have been longing for more self-determination and certainly not longing to be traded as if they were a commodity. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, but bottom line is that the US has nothing to benefit from weakening NATO and the alliance this way.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time with our debate, but definitely a lot of interesting insight, and it'll be interesting to see what our viewers think. Make sure to comment when you see cuts from this interview on our social media. Okay, we are going to be turning now to the spotlight. Let's take a look. All right, this is a spotlight on some stories that you might have missed. So yes, Donald Trump has just accepted someone else's Nobel Peace Prize. And no, it's not as harmless as it sounds. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado handed over her 2025 medal in a show of flattery following the White House's ousting of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. She did this less than 3 months after winning it herself, but the medal itself can't legally be transferred, and the Nobel Committee has made that clear. But that may not even matter because the optics are real here. Machado's gift comes as the future of Venezuela remains unclear, and Trump's acceptance raises questions about how personal flattery could influence major foreign policy decisions. After all, Machado is definitely eyeing a political future in Venezuela. Essentially, it's a reminder that in Trump world, awards and accolades are never just symbolic. And joining us now is our correspondent, Joe Brown, to break this down even further. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what actually goes into winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, it's actually very simple to get nominated. In theory, anybody or any organization can get nominated, and they only need one person to nominate them. And that person can be either a sitting parliamentarian, a professor, or a previous Nobel Prize winner, a Nobel laureate. And they're able to submit before January the 31st of the corresponding year. So that means you only have 11 days to nominate someone for a Nobel Peace Prize. So, Natasha, I don't know if you are wanting to run for this, but I think now is a good time to start courting some politicians to make sure that you can stand up against Trump in this. But after that, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee, which is 5 people who are personally picked by the Norwegian Parliament, they will spend the entirety of the year shortlisting, whistling it down, and eventually around about December, they will choose whoever will be the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
So what are the rules around this prize ultimately? Is it even possible for, Maria Corina to do what she just did and gift this Nobel Peace Prize to Trump?
I mean, nothing's stopping them from actually giving the awards of the Nobel Peace Prize, but the Nobel Peace Prize Committee did come out with a statement, not mentioning anyone in particular, but it was clear who they were referencing.
Right.
They said that even though you are able to give away the medal or the prize money or the diploma that comes with the Nobel Peace Prize, by handing it over, it doesn't mean that they've won it now. So Machado's victory, that is going to remain hers in the history books forever. It won't be given to Trump. There is one very interesting...
Can she get a copy?
She can copy it. She can take a picture of it, scan it. I don't know. However you please, but it will still always be hers. I did find one interesting precedent for this, and that was in the 1940s. The winner of the 1920 Nobel Peace Prize for Literature is a man called Knut Hamsun. He's a Norwegian man who was a Nazi sympathizer. And when the Nazis invaded and occupied Norway, he gave his Nobel Peace Prize to Joseph Goebbels as a sign of support, a sign of friendship. So I'm not sure if that's the precedent that they were anticipating, Machado and Trump, but it's still the same thing. Goebbels did not win a Nobel Peace Prize. Neither did Trump. It doesn't count as theirs.
Okay, so I guess the next question is, how seriously should we take Trump accepting, this Nobel Peace Prize from Machado? Could it realistically influence his decisions when it comes to Venezuela and the next leadership of Venezuela?
Well, you said something interesting in your leads to this item, which was you saying, will flattery decide any major foreign policy decisions from President Trump? And the answer is that has literally been his foreign policy moves for the last year and in his previous 4-year term from 2017 to 2021. That's exactly what people do. That's what Benjamin Netanyahu has done. That's what the Qataris have done. That's what Keir Starmer, who's just spoken to him today about the tariffs from Greenland, that's what he's wanting to do as well. So listen, it won't harm her case. It's not like she went up to Donald Trump with a picture of it going like, hey, do you want it? Do you want it? No, you can't have it.
Right.
It's not like she's going to taunt him about it. It's just a nice gift. It shows that she doesn't care about the awards. Donald Trump very famously does care about the awards. For those who don't remember the reasoning behind this, it's because of the fact that Barack Obama won one in his first year in office, which Obama said he didn't deserve. Even the Peace Prize Committee, in hindsight, said he didn't deserve it. But that has spurred Trump on, and that's why he desperately wants this, whether he'll get it or not. I think it would be too controversial a pick for the Peace Prize Committee to end up giving it to him next year.
All right. Well, interesting breakdown. I guess we're going to have to just wait and see what he actually decides to do when it comes to Venezuela and if this gift from Machado has impacted him in any way. Thank you, Joe, for that breakdown. We are turning to a totally different story now. Syria's north is in turmoil as government forces roll into Kurdish-held towns, seizing key cities and oil fields after years of semi-autonomy. Kurdish fighters say they were promised integration into the national army, but they now accuse Damascus of betrayal as clashes erupt along the Euphrates. Bridges have been blown, towns have been retaken, tensions are spilling over borders, with Iran also cracking down on Kurdish groups and the U.S. scrambling to balance support for the Kurds against backing Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. For the Kurds, the dream of self-rule seems to be slipping further away, leaving a fragile peace and the future of autonomy hanging by a thread. Well, joining us now is Gino Victoria Doabi, a political scientist specializing in international relations. You know, as the Syrian army pushes into areas that have long been controlled by the Kurdish-led SDF, is Kurdish self-governance in Syria still viable, in your opinion?
Well, I think the hope is still there. I don't think we should take the hope out of the people, because right now the thing is that there are still clashes and fighting going on, and SDF is still in control of these areas.
Can Kurdish militias survive even as the U.S. appears to be pulling back its own support? And what would that mean for Kurdish security and self-rule? What other international allies does the SDF actually have?
Well, so a couple of new things has occurred. So the Syrian regime has incited the Arab tribes from the inside of the autonomous region to do uprising against the SDF, and opening the way for the jihadists from the Syrian regime to take control by force and violence and not dialogue, as we have seen a couple of days, and especially recent hours. This happened both in Tabqa and Deir Zor, and Raqqa is still under clashes, and the Kurdish freedom fighters are fighting right now, still bravely, in Raqqa with SDF's control, whilst SDF still is controlling the city. In Hasaka, people are all on alert and have taken up on arms actually to protect themselves. And as we see right now, I heard from inside that up to 3,000 ISIS prisoners have been released by Arab tribes, and in Shaddada, I think the name is, and 200 in Raqqa, which is really alarming. And we know that these ISIS prisoners will come for the Kurdish people first.
Does the Kurdistan region of Iraq offer a realistic model for Kurdish self-rule elsewhere, or does it also reveal the limits of autonomy?
I think the Kurdistan region, autonomous region in North Iraq, shows how people can actually coexist with each other, and how the Kurdish people are the factor and force of stability and coexistence. I think it should be practiced more in the region, as we right now literally have a former al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, and ISIS leader from Idlib as a president in Syria. That must be frightening, not only for the Kurdish people and minorities in Syria, but also for countries in the neighboring and also in Europe. That's pretty scary.
You know, my final question for you is about Iran. We saw Iranian security forces violently targeting protesters in Kurdish regions. How is this moment reshaping Kurdish demands for autonomy or independence within Iran?
You know, the Kurdish people and the Kurdish parties in Iran are not seeking independence or anything like that. They want a secular democratic system where federalism is in the constitution, and where they can governance themselves, and where they have their own Peshmerga forces to protect their borders. Because history has shown us as of today in Rojava, in North Syria, that we can't trust others to govern, rule over us. And if I may, if it's okay, I just want to say to the people, because I'm really emotional, I really want to say to the people who are watching right now that the world asked the Kurds to fight the most brutal terrorists there are in the world. And they fought bravely. And we had over 15 to 20,000 martyrs and 50,000 wounded. And so they did. They fought them. And the world asked us to be ruled by the same terrorists. It's exactly the same to ask Jews, now you shall be ruled by Hamas. And when you see us being slaughtered, our girls being raped, killed, and sold as sex slaves, please don't think that we didn't fight, because we did. That's just what I wanted to say.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us, Gino Victoria. Very, very important to hear your take on this, and hopefully we'll have you back again in the future. All right, we are turning back to the United States now. The spotlight is back on ICE after the fatal shooting of Minneapolis mother Renee Nicole Good, and questions about what these agents can actually do. Under Trump's second term, ICE has ballooned from 10,000 to 22,000 officers tasked with enforcing mass deportations and national security priorities. These agents can arrest and detain suspected undocumented immigrants, even use deadly force in limited circumstances, but recent incidents, including Good's death, have sparked protests and legal battles around the country. Recruitment has been ramped up like never before, with aggressive campaigns targeting Americans, offering big sign-on bonuses, and cutting training in half. Critics say that raises concerns about experience, use of force, and whether ideology is influencing who's ultimately joining ICE. And joining us now is Michael Wilds. He's an immigration lawyer and managing partner at Wilds and Weinberg. So to begin, how much power do ICE agents actually have when it comes to arresting and using force against immigrants, and can that extend to U.S. citizens?
Thank you so much for hosting me. You should just know, for the record, I'm a former federal prosecutor, and I'm a second-generation immigration lawyer. ICE is a federal law enforcement agency. The fact is, right now, they appear to be unhinged, slipping support in the public sphere, war zone type tensions are escalating when they, like other law enforcement agencies, should be de-escalating and going after real criminals. In this case, ICE, whose mandate it is to protect Americans, we're seeing that the statistics are close to about 70% of all ICE detainees are free of any kind of criminal responsibility. And that's a real problem right now, as the justification for the kind of aggressiveness seems to be either reckless or, at the very least, very intimidating.
How are ICE agents recruited under this Trump administration drive, and what are the concerns about training and ideological influence?
In our office, we had a lawyer that left our office and went actually to ICE. There are all kinds of sign-on bonuses, and they're very aggressive. They funded themselves to an exponential where it seems that they have unlimited resources. They have this Operation Metro Surge where they're going in. Now, their justification for this kind of conduct has been that they're paid agitators. This is political. People are obstructing. This is immigration law enforcement. It's a federal matter, and we're immune from the general entanglements. But when you look at the conduct and you see you don't have the right to stop somebody, they could be a citizen. You certainly don't have the right to shoot and use deadly force, as in the incident that we saw. Racial profiling, disrupting civil life, unlawful arrests, and unjustified use of force seems to be what the media is showing. Mm-hmm. It's also diverting local resources from police in derogation of the 10th Amendment. So I see a lot of legal arguments, but bottom line, we're seeing a significant distrust in the community with law enforcement, and our children are watching. This is not a good thing to see. Now, again, I'm very pro law enforcement, and nobody, including immigration lawyers, we want to have hardened criminals in this country unless they can't go back and so forth for asylum and other reasons. But this has to be done more judiciously, and it's not the way America handles its dirty work.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us, Michael Weil. It's really interesting to hear your take. We have to move on to our next story. Before we say goodbye, we all need to take a breather. Sometimes even world leaders and sports icons trade diplomacy and tactics for turntables and dance moves. French First Lady Brigitte Macron and French football team manager Didier Deschamps were spotted showing off their DJ skills at Disneyland Paris on Wednesday. That's right, video shared online captured the duo dancing and spinning tracks, much to the delight of onlookers. And the event wasn't just for fun, it was actually a charity fundraiser for an organization which works to improve conditions for hospitalized children and teens. Around 300 kids and their families attended. They enjoyed the music, the games, and a rare chance to see some French VIPs cutting loose. All right, that is it for Global Eye. Thanks for watching. I'm Natasha Kirchak, and we'll see you next week.